Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our Ask the Expert session today. We're very excited to be with you and looking forward to an interactive conversation. The topic of the conversation today is build, integrate, and accelerate multi-cloud compliance. Let me share a little bit of guidance on what's the best way to engage with the experts here. I'm not going to drain the slide, but please use the chat to ask questions. Question will appear to all attendees once we have our monitors on the call, once they approve it. Use Upvote for your favorite questions, and we will try and answer as many questions as quickly as possible. The session is being recorded, so please do not spam or post inappropriate comments. And there is a Microsoft Code of conduct for your guidance here. Please adhere to it. With that, I'm going to switch gears and get into a quick intro. So I'll start. My name is Hamad Rajub. I'm a director of product marketing. I focus on compliance ecosystem. Over to you, Anne.
Hi, I'm Anne Rahim. I'm a program manager in Microsoft 365 compliance.
Nick.
Hey everybody, Nick Robinson. I'm a program manager in Microsoft 365 compliance focused on e-discovery.
Yaron.
Hello everyone, I'm Yaron Hezroni. I'm a principal program manager for Microsoft Teams platform and ecosystem.
Awesome, thank you. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to start looking at some of the questions that will come through, but I also have a few questions lined up that we know our audiences want to get clarity on. And one of the questions is why multi-cloud compliance? What does it mean? What's the value? And so on. So the reason we're trying to build this multi-cloud compliance is because we know that our customers have invested in multi-cloud strategies. They want to be able to apply our compliance solutions to not just Microsoft data, but to their entire data and infrastructure landscape. And that value includes a number of our compliance solutions, including information protection and governance, advanced e-discovery, insider risk management, data loss prevention, communication compliance, and compliance management, etc. So all of those solutions. And we have multiple ways of enabling that. And that's what we really want to talk about. So with that context and intent behind this capability, let me start with asking a question to Yaron. What are the ways our customers and developers can enable multi-cloud compliance, especially using our Microsoft Graph APIs?
Yeah, thanks, Hamad. Well, Teams contains a lot of valuable data and information our customers use all the time, team messages, meetings, and calls. We enabled those Graph APIs that we discussed in the session to give application access for those team channel and chat messages. So this can be leveraged to be used in solutions like DLP, for example, data loss prevention, when we need to customers wants to monitor messages throughout the organization, and then the application can create a verdict, examine the message and provide a verdict whether this message violates any policy and needs to be blocked. And so if it needs to be blocked, we have the APIs to allow that seamless block within the Teams UX using the Patch API. Similar manner, compliance archiving solutions allows for bulk access to team messages, right? To get all of the compliance requirements fulfilled by archiving messages or message edits and membership of messages and other important and sensitive data that need to be captured. So using those Graph APIs, giving you access to Teams, and not just Teams, right? Through Graph, you can get access to SharePoint, calendar events, and other M365 assets to track those and maintain the compliance that your customer needs.
Love it. No, totally makes sense. And I think that's the beauty of Microsoft Graph, right? Everything is available under the hood and single consistent API model that enables accessing that data and being able to action on it. That's amazing. So speaking of Microsoft Graph APIs, I want to turn attention to advanced discovery, and want to ask a question to Nick Robinson here. What are the key announcements that our developers should be aware of when it comes to advanced discovery APIs and related scenarios?
That's right. Thanks, Ahmad. Yeah, it's great. We're really excited at this build to share that the entire end-to-end workflow of advanced discovery is now supported by API. So customers can get started, their dev teams can get started to create integrations, create custom automations using these APIs at the beta endpoint. And as we get usage and work through kind of the beta and get stable, then we'll be able to transition those to GA. But we really encourage folks to take advantage now that you have the end-to-end workflow from identifying your data sources all the way to reviewing content and exporting data, to experimenting and trying out what makes the most sense for your organizations and to light those up. And we know that customers had been looking for, hey, you've been coming out iteratively, you started out with a few of the, create your search, create your collections, but we wanted to get to that full end-to-end workflow before they really dove in. And so now that that's available, we're excited to see what folks are able to build and really, experiment with for their organization and the processes that they have.
That's amazing. That's really, really good stuff. Having that full end-to-end workflow and being able to manipulate that programmatically, build things at scale. That's really, really powerful. And then continuing on that train of thought, and I know you talked a little bit about some of the new announcements and innovative approaches that we've come up with, especially around enabling built-in compliance, as you talked about in your breakout session as well. Do you want to share more insights with the developers here?
Yeah, of course. So this is super exciting. We're so excited to announce built-in compliance specifically around advanced e-discovery for app data that's being ingested through Microsoft Graph. And this is a huge deal in terms of not only being able to unblock customer, especially enterprise customer adoption, who often require advanced e-discovery capabilities to even use app partners, but furthermore, also being able to greatly expand your app integration in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So not only in compliance, but with a single integration, you're also lighting up experiences like intelligent discovery and enterprise search. And so through ingesting through Microsoft Graph, we're so excited to announce so many different features for our app partners to become much more embedded within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. And it's a really exciting opportunity to expand your customer base and really get so much more exposure and visibility throughout our products.
Awesome, thanks. And I have a couple of questions coming in the chat. So folks who've joined us live, please keep the questions coming. So I'm gonna start with one of those. The question is about, could you speak, that's for you, Anne, could you speak a little bit more about the process of building a graph connector? What does that look like?
Yeah, definitely. So Microsoft Graph Connectors are offering a simple way to bring in your external data into Microsoft Graph and be able to leverage them for these unique experiences, especially for advanced e-discovery. So if you're wanting to build a Microsoft Graph connector, you'll need to use the Microsoft Graph APIs. So there are a few important ones, and you can find much more about them on our documentation. But to quickly highlight, the Connections API that'll allow you to create and manage your external data connections. And then the Schema API, so define and register the schema of your data types before bringing them into Microsoft Graph. So we then can map the data into advanced e-discovery to light up our functionality like query and search, etc. So if you're interested to learn more details about the APIs, definitely head over to aka.ms/graph connectors. There's a working with connections API section, and you can learn so much more about it there.
Awesome, thanks, Anne. That's really good guidance. There's another question. I'm actually not sure, but I'll read it out here, see if it makes sense. Otherwise, we can take it offline as well. The question is, can you elaborate more on security and compliance labels? So how do you read that, and what's your guidance on it?
Yeah, definitely. So that's a great question. Basically, after you've built a graph connector, you'll need to define the schema for it. So what's the schema? It's the flat list of properties that you want to add to the data connection, along with any attributes or labels so that we know what that data is. And there's a batch of security and compliance labels that we're encouraging developers to map to their data so that we can then light up the advanced e-discovery workflow for you all. So these are things like, what's the title, who sent that content, when did they send it? And it's really helpful for advanced e-discovery since the purpose of it is knowing who knew what when. So we provide those labels to you guys to map your data to so that you can then use it in advanced e-discovery and that legal admins can find your app data inside the workflow they already know. So that those labels will also be available in our documentation, so go over and check those out as well.
That's amazing. Great guidance. Thank you. There's another question that's come in, and it's about why would an app developer, I'm paraphrasing it, but why would AED be useful for apps? Like what's the context there?
Definitely. So I can maybe give a brief overview and pass it off to Nick as well, who can speak on this. But there's so many different reasons why enterprise customers would really need to use advanced e-discovery, anything from legal requests, data spillage or audits, even things like a policy violation in your data or an internal investigation. All those can trigger the need for a legal investigation, and that's why so many enterprise customers require advanced e-discovery capabilities. Anything to add, Nick?
Yeah, that's right, Anne. No, great, good question, Sri. Thanks for that. Yeah, really, for a lot of regulated organizations, think about healthcare organizations, even manufacturing, financial services organizations. Many of the enterprises that we engage with on a daily basis, they have strict requirements around their compliance requirements. So whether it's producing audit documentation, monitoring communications between certain role groups in their organization, understanding what may have taken place for an internal investigation or for a potential lawsuit from external, being able to discover the content in the tenant is super important, actually critical. And so a lot of these customers in these regulated environments will gate what apps they can bring into their ecosystem based on their adherence to these security and compliance policies. So for an app, really, to have the ability to be e-discoverable means that you can get access to some of these organizations that have these strict requirements. And it's kind of built in and ready for you off the shelf from a Microsoft 365 perspective. So I think that's one of the key value props. And of course, for the organizations, they're able to execute their mission critical activities in a compliant way. And of course, that's one of the most important things that they need to do is to help make their users productive while they're still meeting those compliance requirements, which can be quite stringent. So those are super important considerations, and we see the value kind of on both sides for the ISVs and the apps, as well as the customer organizations. And then just to add to the question on the labels, so I think there's a couple different things here just to kind of piece it apart a little bit. So there's the question of the semantic labels that we want ISVs to apply to their content coming into the Microsoft 365 system via the graph connectors, which are kind of like metadata and ways for us to reason over the content so that admins can find what they're looking for. So they know the users, the authors, the participants, the time, the topics, all those different things about that content. And I just wanted to jump in because we do have this concept of security labels where we have the Microsoft Information Protection Labeling construct where you can apply protection using these labels. We also have retention labels, which are sometimes called compliance labels, but those are a little bit different than the semantic labeling. So I just want to clarify that those are kind of two different forks, both using the name label in our system, and wanted to kind of pull that apart and see the question on the security and compliance labels. We don't know who that came from, but if you're still listening, you could clarify on which kind of portion of that you're asking about, because there are kind of two different forks. And so information protection labels, retention labels are really about, hey, applying a label to a piece of content to either protect it, make sure that it's encrypted, that it has the right restrictions on who can access it, or to put the right retention duration so that, hey, if this is a business record and I need to retain this for 7 years, that I have the right retention policy placed on that specific item. I know it'll be available for that amount of time before it gets deleted and processed through the system. So separate pieces there. Hopefully that helps build it out and help a little bit on the first question of why would an app be interested in kind of having e-discoverability of their content. yeah, hopefully that makes sense. And happy to clarify if we get kind of a secondary question there.
So Nick, Dean is asking what is on the whiteboard in the background, some unannounced plans, some products that we should be thinking about. Just kidding.
That's right, Dean. It's just a little teaser. So if you can, zoom in, since I don't have my blurred background or my my fake background on today.
Awesome, great discussion. Please keep the questions coming. I really appreciate that. I want to switch gears and go back to Yarn again one more time to talk about what's your guidance from a Graph API developer perspective. And let's take the scenario of the export capability, right? I'm a line of business developer sitting in the enterprise. What is your guidance? How do I look at that Teams export API to weave it in the flow of work and solve for my situation as far as archiving is concerned?
Yeah. Well, first, of course, you need to understand what data do you need to get out of Export API. Export API allows you today to export channel messages via export kind of team with team ID, and that will give you all of the channel message for that team. A different endpoint will get you the chat and user ID for all user messages. So first and foremost, of course, understand what data you're looking for to export. Beyond that, Export API is just any of like our other Graph REST API. So it only enabled in application permission. So you need to make sure that you get access with the proper app permissions for Export API. It also different than other GET kind of chat APIs that we have. You can provide some filters there for the API to bound it for the time period. So get me all of Hamad messages for the last 24 hours or maybe for the last 2 weeks. And we also offer a page kind of paging system, so you can specify how many messages you can get in one call response. The other thing to bear in mind is that if you have more messages coming in the export, if you really ask for like a long period of time, you will have to advance that call to get the next page and next page and next page until you fulfill all the messages. Nick Kramer on the line as well, if you want to add anything from a developer consideration.
No, I don't have anything too insightful to add beyond just that the Graph APIs are the gateway to doing all these great things, and they kind of blend in with all the other Teams APIs. It's kind of all one big happy family at Microsoft.
Love it. Thanks, Nick. So, Yaron, just continuing on that train of thought, if I'm a developer and I'm using those APIs, I'm building those applications, can you give me a few examples of what have others done? Are there examples for ISVs, both from a compliance perspective, but also from maybe like a sentiment analysis kind of a scenario? Are there any examples that you want to give so as a developer I can visualize and I can see what's happening with those APIs in this space?
Yeah, so we are currently working with several set of our strategic partners to develop our compliance archiving solutions, for example, that require bulk access to all of the team kind of tenant messages or for users under compliance. One thing I did not mention in the previous question is that, of course, this type of access requires tenant admin consent. So once you set up the right permissions to access Export API, your customer will need to provide access to your consent for access for your app to get those messages. So compliance archiving solutions are in the works. Some of those are already kind of available very soon, and others might come a little bit later this year by our partners. We're also working, STEM APIs is helping backup providers to collect Teams data to create backup snapshots of customers' data. The API itself gives you access, like bulk access to team messages. So you can use that for variety of compliance scenarios. E-discovery, third-party partner e-discovery solutions are also dependent on this type of API to get all the data from teams and run their own e-discovery models on it. So those are a few of the examples that.
Awesome. Totally makes sense. And you said something, I just want to extrapolate that a little bit so our audiences can stay grounded with us on that. So we have those capabilities. So DLP as a scenario, Teams archiving as a scenario, all of that is available as a first-party platform capability on M365 today, out of the box, built in, all the good stuff. However, this is an ecosystem play for us, right? We're enabling those APIs so customers can build innovative solutions on their own. We're enabling ISVs to be able to build those applications. So it's a matter of supporting our ecosystem and giving choice in the hands of the customer. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a representative of the team ecosystem group at Microsoft, we try to hold that principle, first party equal third party, very highly, right? So anything we enable our on Microsoft 365 compliance, solutions to get access to, we also want to open up for our ecosystem. So we have options for our customers, and so we've done so with the set of APIs, not just the Teams APIs. I think also the e-discovery APIs and any other APIs give you access to similar sensitive data. That's a principle we hold dearly, and we hope to see a lot of solutions coming from the ecosystem as well to give customers the options to choose.
Awesome, thank you. And I'll go back to Rahim real quick. And if I'm a developer and I want to bring Microsoft compliance value, let's say starting with advanced e-discovery, I want to extend it to those third-party SaaS applications. I want to use the Graph Connector API that you have been talking about. What's your go-to? Where should I start? What's the step number one in that journey for me? And you're on mute.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. So step number one in that journey is definitely building a graph connector, and it's definitely laid out step by step in our documentation for how to create and then manage bringing in that external data into the graph, and also how to define and register your schema with those security and compliance labels that we've talked about previously. So build that graph connector, and then add all the applicable security and compliance labels to your data so we can then map them to advanced e-discovery. And we're also really excited to offer adaptive cards. They'll give you a really rich preview that we support in advanced e-discovery to render your content so that anyone using that workflow can see what your content would have looked like right there in the app. So we're really excited for you guys to bring in your content, and please refer to the documentation for any further guidance on that.
Awesome, thank you. That's exciting stuff. I'll go back to Nick Robinson real quick here. So Nick, what does that mean from overall compliance and advanced e-discovery landscape? Meaning we have data connectors that allow us to bring non-Microsoft data onto our platform and then be able to apply advanced e-discovery workflows on it. Now we're lighting up these apps that can also participate in that workflow. What does this goodness mean? Like, where are we going? What does it mean for a developer?
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think it's really good, Hamad, to have options. And so I think one of the interesting things here is that we're seeing, we've been hearing and we've been on this journey for a couple of years now. Customers are saying, hey, what you guys are doing is great, but we've got other data, we've got other things. Just like you said at the beginning, this is a multi-cloud strategy. We've got all these other apps and things that we're utilizing. And so now as a customer for Microsoft 365, you have options. You can archive third-party data into Microsoft 365 as kind of a compliance workflow, have that available to your communication compliance, to your e-discovery, to your archiving and retention. But then you also have this new model that Anne's sharing with us today, where you can start to just have access to that new app content, app and ISV content that you want to have access to in Microsoft 365, use those native solutions. So it becomes kind of an a la carte option in a way. And then, of course, those solutions and some of the access is embedded and supported by APIs. So I think it gives a nice set of options for customers to do different things. Now, because not everybody wants to archive all their third-party data into Microsoft 365, but they might want to have select access to some apps here and there. So I think the way that we've been looking at it and what we've heard from customers is that it gives more flexibility and choice to essentially, hey, depending on the outcome, the scenarios for my organization, for the most important things that I have top of mind, what's my approach? And it's not going to be one size fits all. So I think with the different flavors of ways to incorporate that multi-cloud data, ways to manage that and to utilize the native tool set, just gives those kind of that choice about how to approach these challenges. And then I think over time, we'll see some models become more popular and more utilized than others. And then that will help us identify, hey, where do we want to continue to go further in terms of making things really, really work nicely together.
That's amazing. And I think another thought that comes to my mind and I would love to share here is that there's also another angle of in-place access to the data, structured and unstructured, right? We have this beautiful capability through Azure Purview that we can say, hey, my data is sitting in this AWS S3 bucket somewhere. I still want to be able to apply classification and labeling as part of compliance capability to that. We also support that. So it's like a whole gamut of capabilities that's available out of the box, and it's a multi-cloud enablement scenario for our customers across the board, which is really, really amazing to see. Dean has another question. Probably this is our last question. We're running over a little bit time because in the beginning, top of the hour, we had some technical issues. And Dean, your question is, are there any specific recommendations in the compliance manager that can be fulfilled by this new functionality? And I believe you're referring to the capability that Anne shared with us. I'll take a quick stab at that, but Anne, please chime in as well. Advanced e-discovery is one of the first workloads that we are enabling with this new API, this new app-driven model. But you can anticipate that we will add additional compliance solutions to that, and compliance management being one of those. And do you think that's an accurate representation? And would you like to add anything else?
Yeah, definitely. That's great. And just to add on a bit, we're hoping to also make it a much more seamless workflow to manage your data connections right out of the Teams center. And then also within the compliance manager, you can view as a single pane of glass view both the app partner data sources alongside your Microsoft 365 data sources, which makes it a much more seamless experience to navigate through all the different data sources. So yeah, I think that's great.
That's awesome. So I think we're coming to an end of this awesome conversation. I'm super appreciative of our experts here on the call, support folks that have joined our Teams live event, but most importantly, you, the audience, of staying with us and spending your afternoon, evening with us. Really appreciate it. Here are some resources and call to action. We're all very excited to see what you build with our compliance platform. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ahmad.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thank you all.